Today, we're going to be talking about how to optimize your HP EVs for most situations. So recently I've been getting asked a lot of questions like how do I optimize my EVs? And while I've been trying my best to explain this in my videos, I think it's about time I made its own dedicated video. I do plan on doing another video in the near future for important speed tiers, so if that's something you're interested in as well, consider subscribing so you don't miss out. And finally, before we jump into it, I just wanted to add that while we'll be talking about how to optimize for certain items and abilities, if you need to run more or less EVs due to either needing to live a certain calc or because you don't have enough EVs to spare, that is completely fine. This is just a baseline guide and not something you have to follow 100% of the time. Oh, and one other important thing I did actually forget to mention here is Pokemon always rounds down. That is something very important to keep in mind. It's definitely something I'll touch on in the near future. Anyway, so as you guys can see here, I have grabbed some of the Pokemon that I think would be pretty popular in Regulation F, and in particular using, certain items or moves that we'll basically be touching on today, right? So kicking us off here, we have Incineroar, right? So Incineroar here is holding a Sitrus Berry. Sitrus Berry basically, gives you 1/4 of your max HP back when you were below half health. So I'm going to pull up a little calculator here, right? So actually, first of all, we'll just go here, go up to the max here, you see 202, right? So then if we pull up a little calculator here, basically, I'll tell you guys this just off, because I know it off the top of my head. Basically for Incineroar with the Sitrus Berry, to optimize the EVs, you want 200 on the dot. The reason for that is if we go 202 here, right, and then we divide that by 4, you'll get 50.5. Essentially, you were just wasting, some potential like regen there because Pokemon always rounds down, right? So because you get 50.5, that will always round down to 50. Where, for example, if we go 200 divided by 4 here, we'll get 50. So the way to optimize, Incineroar for a Sitrus Berry in particular is just to go 200 as, HP here, which is, definitely something to keep in mind. Essentially, you're just not wasting those extra, half a basically HP point, right? And then going over to Farigiraf here. And look, that also works for like basically anyone else you want to run Sitrus Berry with. Essentially, the way you want to do it is always make sure that you have a, your HP stat is basically divisible by 4. That is the most important thing. So the next one here is the Wiki Berry. Now, the Wiki Berry is also known as a 33% berry. There are a bunch of these, different 33% berries, right? You're talking about the Figgy berries, the Wiki berries, Margot berries, Aguava berries, and the Ayapapa berries, right? Now, these ones are a little bit more difficult to just do off the top of your head. It's not as simple as just a multiple of 4 like we had before. This gives you back 1/3 of your max HP, right? Or 33% of your maximum HP, yeah? So if you have a look here, we have 227. So we go back to our calculator here, right? We go 227, we times that by 33%, right? We'll get, 74 HP, 74.91 to be exact. So that is actually quite inefficient because obviously we're very, very close to that 75, but we just miss out, right? But I also know if you go to 226, times that by 33%, we are also still hitting that 74 range, right? Same thing if we go 225 here, times that by 33%, we will also still be in that 74 range. So now the question is 225 optimal or is 224? Because that is going to be our next, closest thing to the breakpoint, right? So basically go there, times that by 33%. And as you can see here, we do not make it, right? Meaning that 225 is actually optimal. If you want to get the maximum out of your Wiki Berry here, that'll get you roughly, what was that? It was 74 HP back there. So that is, something to definitely keep in mind. So the next one here is the leftovers. The leftovers are obviously a very, very popular item. This is one of the, one of the most used items, I guess, in terms of, like looking at optimal HP. And Annihilate is a fantastic, option for that as well. Personally, the way I like to look at these is basically anything that, is a multiple of 16, essentially, right? I'll hopefully throw up my little graph here if I remember. I've just got one, written down, done it in Photoshop, just essentially so I can, kind of remember, right? So essentially anything, anything that is times or I guess divisible by 16, I should say, right? 1/6. For example, I know that 208 is the breakpoint on Annihilate, right? So for example, if we go here, if we just go 208, we divide that by, 16, we will get here 13. So perfect. That is how much we'll get back each turn. I guess a way to, show this off as well. If you go 207, we divide that here by 16, you will see we get 12.9. Again, that will round down to 12. That is why it's important to hit that, that 180 mark. But also if you want to take it a step further, we go up here to 217 here, and you'll see here if we go to 217 and then we divide that here by 16, we will still be getting 13. That is why for Annihilate in particular, going the 208 here total is very, very good for optimizing your leftovers recovery. Now, just carrying on from that one here, we have the Grassy Terrain regen on Rillaboom. This is obviously, not the most important thing I would say to calc for, but obviously, there are definitely situations where it's something worth keeping in mind, especially too because Rillaboom is a mon that not a lot of people actually want to go max HP on. And yeah, so like sometimes if you don't want to necessarily dump it all into HP, it is nice to know where your little breakpoint there is, right? And for Rillaboom, I already know that if I got to 232, I'll hit that breakpoint, right? Which is 192, right? So if we go here, right, and we go, 192, we divide that by 16. I don't know if I mentioned it there. I should have. This is the exact same as leftovers. You get, Grassy Terrain will give you 1/6. It doesn't actually show here, but it will give you 1/16, sorry, of your HP back. So for example, here, if we go 192, obviously you can see here, we are getting, 12 HP back, right? And if we max that out, we go up to 207. As we saw from Annihilate before, this is not going to cut it, right? Because Annihilate here was 208. And Rillaboom's max is 207, which means, again, if we go 207, we divide that by, 16 here, we will just be shy of that breakpoint. So a good thing to keep in mind, Rillaboom is not necessarily a mon where it's like super important to, calc this for, but it's definitely worth keeping in mind that, Rillaboom, for example, at 192 will hit that breakpoint. It needs to get that extra HP back every turn from its Grassy Terrain. Next up here is Amoonguss. Now, Amoonguss, very similar to those 33% berries before. It has this ability in Regenerator. Every time this one switches out, it gets 1/3 of its max HP back. And it does say here it is rounded down. So, for example, if we pull out our calculator here, if we just go, we'll clear this out. You go 221, and then we, times that here by, 33%. We will get a whopping 72.9. So we do actually just miss out because obviously 222 would give us, that 1/3, which would give us that 73, which obviously would have been very, very nice, right? But let's have a look here. So if we go down to, for example, 222, we get 220 here. We times that out by 33%, and we will get a 72.6. Okay. So then if we go down to 219, how do we go here? So if we go, 219, we times that by 33%. And you will see here we get 72.27. So then the question now is 218. Does this give us a optimal number, right? Does this give us what we want? And the answer is no, it just misses out. So for example, 219 is optimal on, Amoonguss for obviously getting back as much from your, Regenerator as possible. But I will quickly add this in here because this is something that, you will most likely come across at some point is Amoonguss also loves running an item in Sitrus Berry. Right now, the issue with going 219 here, right, is if we go, 219 and we divide that, or sorry, we'll times that. We'll keep up with what we're doing, yeah. Actually, we'll divide it because it's easier, right? If we just divide that by 4, you will see here we do just miss that breakpoint. Whereas obviously if we go 220 and then we divide that by 4, we hit that bump, right? So for example, if you are running Sitrus Berry on Amoonguss, while it is technically not as efficient to go 220 because of Regenerator, obviously you are getting back that extra HP from Sitrus Berry, and you're obviously not really losing anything out on Regenerator, just a slight inefficiency there. So I would suggest if you're running Sitrus Berry Amoonguss to go 220, and if you're running something like say Rocky Helmet, for example, 219 is probably better. Now, these next ones here, these ones are actually very, very simple. These are moves like Recover, moves like Pollen Puff. They all kind of link in together. So we'll quickly touch on them all at the same time here. If you've ever seen any of my EV spreads in the past, a lot of the time you will notice I tend to always go for even numbers, right? I will always, for example, that's absolutely fine. Let me have a look. Like for example, Amoonguss, I would always go 220, not 221, simply because, well, one, obviously Amoonguss, is a slightly different story. A lot of the time if Amoonguss is going to side Pollen Puff and Ally, it is more efficient to have an even number than it is to have a odd number because, when you're talking about, moves like Pollen Puff, moves like Recover, they are always just 50%, right? So for example, here, our Porygon, if we go here, we go, we'll clear that out. We go 192, we divide that by 2. Obviously an even number divided by 2, you always get an even number. And then if you go an odd number here divided by an even number, you're going to get that slight inefficiency there. So that's a lot of the time why if you ever see me always essentially always doing my best to put a even number on my HP spreads, a lot of the time that's because I'm always I'm in that mindset of I play a lot with Amoonguss. It's one of the best ones of the format, and side Pollen Puffing yourself is obviously very, very important, right? So I don't want to miss out on that slight efficiency. And you'll notice too, obviously a lot of these optimal HPs, if we just go back through them here, 208, this one here is slightly different because it's a 33% berry, but really outside the 33% berries, you will almost always want an even number HP stat, right? Regenerator obviously works the same as those, but as we said here, if you've got Sitrus Berry on this, you want to go for that 220. But yeah, that's why with Pokemon like Porygon, I'll always go an even number, which is pretty easy because you just go max out HP. For mods like Amoonguss, again, Amoonguss is probably just a bad example because Amoonguss is the guy who's doing the side Pollen Puffing, but obviously it's it's a good thing to keep in mind that having even numbers there is very, very good. And then same thing with mons like Cresselia and Clefairy. I put them both here because we have Lunar Blessing and obviously Life Dew. Both of these moves, heal allies by 1/4. Again, if we have a look at our, go back to our Amoonguss here. If you have, 220 and then you just, divide that by 4. Perfect, you get that nice even 55 HP. But if you go to the 219, which we had for the Regenerator recovery, and then you divide that by 4, obviously it's just going to be slightly inefficient. So that's things to keep in mind, right? Because you're obviously going to be sometimes in situations where it's like, hey, maybe you're Rocky Helmet, right? your Rocky helmet and your Regenerator, right? And because of that, you want to go 219, but you're also pairing this up with a Cresselia, for example. And it's like, oh, do you want to maybe be slightly inefficient on the Regenerator to make it more efficient on the Life Do? In that situation, I would say yes, just because like obviously, if you're 219, you're missing out on a whole HP point here, right? Like that's rounding down to 54. Whereas if you were 220, divide that by 4, obviously that's going to then be 55, which is obviously, it's one of those things where it doesn't seem that big, but all of a sudden, if you say potentially get 3 of them off on your Amoonguss, all of a sudden that's 3 extra HP. And that can be the difference between living something and, dying to something, right? And also too here, I did actually kind of throw this in at the end. It's also Heal Pulse. Heal Pulse is also the exact same as obviously our good friend Pollen Puff and Recover here too. So definitely something to keep in mind there as well. And now that is everything I could essentially think of for the HP, gaining HP or recovering HP. So now I quickly want to touch on losing HP because I do think this is also very, very important. So as you can see here, we have our good friend Qian Pao. Now, Qian Pao is not necessarily the best, I guess, example for this, simply because, Qian Pao is the one that tends to run things like Focus Sash, for example. And I was thinking about using our good friend Landorus Incarnate here, but obviously Landorus Incarnate has this, beautiful ability in Sheer Force. And because of that, we've just slapped a Qian Pao in here and we're just going to make it work. Basically, I guess for anyone who doesn't know, Life Orb gives you, a 1.3 times boost to all your attacks. Very, very good, but it makes you lose 1/10 of your HP every time you attack. Essentially, the way to optimize this is always make sure your HP stat ends in a 9, right? Again, we'll use our good friend Qian Pao here. So if you see here, if we run up to 28 here, we'll have 259. So if we go 259, and we divide that by 10, we get 15.9, right? So that means that will round down to we'll lose 15 HP per turn. And then if you go obviously up, that one more point here, we go to 160. If you go 160 divided by 10, you're losing 16 points per turn. So essentially what that means, if you are a Life Orb attacker and you attack twice, you effectively have less HP. I guess the way to quickly explain that is if you've got 160 HP, you attack twice, you're going to lose 32 HP, which will put you at a total of, let's just do this here, 160 take away 32 equals 128, right? But if I go 159, right, and because we've got 159, we're only losing 15 per turn, which means we're going to lose 30 after 2 turns. All of a sudden we have 129, right? So if we pull up our calculator's gone, but essentially before 128, right, this one 129. So after 2 attacks from that Life Orb, we effectively have more HP than we would have before. That is why when you are working with something like a Life Orb, if you can, it is always optimal to end in a 9, but basically never ending on a 0, right? A great example of this, I'll quickly pull this up as well, was Great Task. Joseph Ugarte used this earlier on in Regulation C, I think it was. He had a Great Task here. As you can see, Great Task, with a Life Orb. Its HP stat here is actually, 190 with 0 investment. Oh my god. So what Joseph did was he actually ran 2 points less. He ran 29 HP Great Task. And again, effectively, that's because if he attacks twice, he has more effective HP than he would otherwise. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. Anyway, moving over to our friend Landorus here, as you can see, we have the substitute move, right? So essentially the way sub works is you'll take 1/4 of your HP and you will turn that into a substitute, right? Because of that, you always want your sub to be basically divisible by 4, because again, right, if you go up to say here 195, let's clear this out, go 195 divided by 4, our substitute will effectively have 48 HP, whereas obviously we were to bump that up one more time to 196. Oh, what's our calculator doing here? If we go with 196, we divide that by 4, our substitute now effectively has 49 HP, which again can be very, very important because that could be the difference between your sub breaking and your sub obviously staying alive. And yeah, definitely something to keep in mind there. And I guess, extending that over here to Shedtail, my favorite Pokemon Sceptile, it just got Shedtail. Thankfully Shedtail, it's half, not a quarter, so this one's very easy. As long as it is an even number, it is fantastic. So again, if we see here, we just go 177. Divide that by 2, we have 88.5, obviously effectively making that Shedtail worth 88 HP. But obviously if we drop that down 1, we go here, we clear that out, 176 divided by 2, and we still have 88 HP on that Shedtail. Now for this one here, obviously our Fluttermane, you see nothing here. I probably should have pulled T-Tar up for this, or Hippo. But essentially we're going to be talking about Sand Chip. You know what, I'm even going to nickname this guy. We're just going to go Sand Chip. The reason I'm using this, oh god, Fluttermane's still there, Sand Chip. Essentially, the reason I'm using Fluttermane is because I ran Fluttermane at OCIC this year, and I paired it up with, Tyranitar. So, something to keep in mind there is, partners of, Tita will definitely want to, run with obviously Sandchip, right? And obviously 1/16 is, the damage you take from Sandchip, which is obviously the same as, leftovers. But because we're losing HP here, we actually don't want it to be perfect. We want it to be one below what you normally want, for example, right? So let's just do a quick one here. Obviously I know it's 1/16, so we're going to want this to be about 160. Just to start with, right? So if we go here, we go 160, right? And we divide that by 16. Every single turn we'll be losing 10 points of damage. Oh, sorry, 10 points of HP due to Sandchip, right? If you're pairing this up with a Tyranitar, for example. But if we turn that down to 159, we've got one less HP, but after one turn of Sandchip, we have the exact same amount of HP. As you can see here, we're losing 9.9375, which effectively will always round down to 9 damage, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. When you're pairing up with Sandchip, obviously being one below, obviously that multiple of 16 is what you want ideally. But really, just try to avoid basically being as, very close to, that break point of like, for example, if I'm 162, I'm losing 16. If I'm 161, I'm losing 16. Sorry, not 16. I'm losing 10. But obviously, yeah, if I'm here, I'm losing 10. If I'm here, I'm losing 9. So why have these 3 extra points of HP if, I end up staying on the board for 2 more turns, 3 more turns, all of a sudden, I've got the exact same HP I would if I was here. Especially, if you're pairing this thing up with, things like protect as well, right? If you're going to like potentially be protecting your own sandstorm, the last thing you want is really to, essentially just kind of screw yourself over by losing 1 HP point too many. And then the final one I'm going to touch on here is Solar Power. Now, Solar Power obviously really only affects Charizard off the top of my head. Obviously, there are other Solar Power mons, but this is probably the best of of the bunch. Solar Power, basically, you lose 1/8 of your HP per turn. So very similar to what we were talking about before. Is you want to find that multiple of 8 in this example, and then you want to obviously make sure you're one below it, right? So in Charizard's case here, right? So if we go 185, right, and then we divide that by 8. You'll see here we're at 23.125, which is not ideal. Ideally, we would get that down to 22 if possible, right? And obviously, if you're playing something like Charizard, chances are you're not playing max HP. You're probably going max speed, max special attack. But we're using max HP here just as an example, right? So if we go down to 184, for example, we'll see this. So we go 184, we divide that by 8, and would you look at that? We're right on 23. So if we drop that by 1 more point once again to 183, we will get our optimal HP breakpoint here. 183, divide that by 8. And yeah, bang, we're losing 22. Obviously something to keep in mind as well, especially when you're running things like, Life Orb and, Solar Power. Ideally, you probably do want to be as low HP as possible. Again, because chances are these are going to be very offensive mons. So I'm just going to use Charizard as my final example here. And if we divide this by 8 here, you'll see there, bang, we're actually a little too high, right? So this is where we go back to that whole Joseph Ugarte question, right? If I go down to 152, for example, 152, we divide that then by 8. All of a sudden, I'm on 19. So it would almost be optimal to run a imperfect Charizard with 120, 27 IVs in the HP, going 151. Because again, if we go 151, we divide that by 8. You'll see here we're losing 18 points per turn, which effectively means after 2 turns of Solar Power, our HP is the same. And then any more than that, obviously, will be, in a positive HP, right? We would have, the HP we would have lost is more beneficial to us to have actually less HP than to have obviously the max IVs there. But again, to keep in mind, like this is someone that also wants to run Life Orb, for example. So all of a sudden, if you were trying to pair this with Life Orb, all of a sudden you're like running down to here. And then the big question you got to start asking yourself at that point is that, optimal? Because when I say this one wants to run Life Orb, I'm more or less talking back in the Dynamax format. But obviously, yeah, if you were running this in a Dynamax format, maybe something like that could have been more optimal, right? Running down to like 23 because you got Life Orb and Solar Power, just getting, as much out of it as possible. Alright guys, so that is the end of the video here. I hope you guys, learned a bit about, optimizing HP. Obviously, this is something that is, it's not something you have to do every game, obviously. I do really want to point that out. I want to make a point of it. It is very nice on mons like, Incineroar. If I'm just going to go max HP anyway, if I got a Sitrus Berry, you may as well just hit that, that breakpoint there and put maybe those 2 extra points into speed and so on and so forth, right? Things like Annihilate, if you need to like, go like 210 to live a certain calc, do it. If not, 2A it's just a good, it's a good break point, especially you got lefties. But yeah, I really hope that, was informative, I guess. And I hope you guys, kind of understood it, I guess. I kind of went into that. I kind of winged it. I had my little notes there, but yeah, I didn't really, script it out. Like maybe I should have, I don't know. But yeah, anyway, guys, let me know what you think down below. And yeah, I'll catch you to the next one. Peace.